Good evening and welcome back. You're watching the Newsbreak. Now our top focus is going to be the Uniform Civil Code. But there seems to be a dispute over the word uniform. Is it really going to be uniform? Let's explain in greater detail. Let's first start with one state government, and that's the point that we are going to discuss. How uniform will the civil code really be? Why are we saying this? Well, the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code is going to be a possibility soon because the panel says, the panel which was supposed to handle the recommendation says that the draft is ready. The expert committee has prepared a draft bill. Uttarakhand Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami in fact met Amit Shah over this draft. The meeting was attended by the drafting committee chairperson Justice Ranjana Desai. This meeting happened late last night yesterday in the national capital. The Uttarakhand draft is likely to be a template for the Central Uniform Civil Code. Now, there is a reason why we are giving you this background. There is a parliamentary panel on law and justice here at the center. And the chairman is believed to have said of this committee that you must keep tribals out of the Uniform Civil Code. It is headed by Mr. Sushil Modi. He says keep Northeast tribals from areas in 6th schedule out of the Uniform Civil Code. Sushil Modi's suggestion came after Chhattisgarh Chief Minister's comment on tribals, where Bhupesh Singh Baghel said, what will happen to tribals' belief and tradition? Now, the opposition immediately has put up a question to the government. An exemption being made, or talk of an exemption being made, even before the implementation of the Uniform Civil Code, proves that this law cannot be applied with uniformity. It cannot be applied uniformly. Now, what does the Uttarakhand Civil Code say on tribals? Because that is the draft which is now supposedly ready, and this same template may be followed at the center. Well, media reports suggest that this draft law talks about tribals, saying that the tribals support reforms in the meet with Uttarakhand panel. There were political concerns being raised on the impact of Uttarakhand UCC on the tribals, but the panel feels that most tribals are part of the consultation. They say that polygamy is less prevalent as a practice now. So, many of the tribals will accept the changes of the Uniform Civil Code, thus suggesting that perhaps there will be changes applicable on the tribals as well. But here at the center, Mr. Sushil Modi, who is the head of the Parliamentary Committee on Law and Justice, says that we are considering taking tribals out of the ambit of the Uniform Civil Code. And thus we come to certain big questions. If tribals are going to be out of the central UCC ambit, is this really a uniform code then? And then the second and most important question, if tribals are not part of this code, then will this open a Pandora's box of demands by other communities and other religions? Because the Uttarakhand UCC draft is, in all likelihood, as is being told, could be a template for the Central Uniform Civil Code. So, what is going to be the reality? And how uniform will the Uniform Civil Code really be? Let me introduce our guests this evening. Tanveer Ahmed Mir is a senior advocate of the Supreme Court. Desh Ratan Nigam, also a senior advocate in the Supreme Court. Mr. Mir, I want to begin with you first. Even before a draft has been presented, even before we know the final nuances and details of the Uniform Civil Code, in what form it is going to come up in Indian Parliament, we have suggestions being made, as reported widely in the media, of the House Panel Chief, Mr. Sushil Modi, suggesting that tribals must be kept out of the ambit. So then, one comes to a very logical question. Then how do you justify the word uniform in a Uniform Civil Code?
Well, you hit the nail on its head. The problem here is that the call for Uniform Civil Code in terms of its timing. I understand that my friend Mr. Nigam, supports a particular ideology or political party. But for last 9 years, the government, and insofar as Uniform Civil Code is taken into consideration, in terms of constitutional parameters, it is the duty of the central government of India to have a uniform civil code or a debate for it at a central level. For last so many years, since this dispensation has been in power, there has been, first of all, no steps taken towards a discussion on uniform civil code in terms of what will be the uniformity, what will be the template, what will be the parameters, who will talk, how you're going to talk to the stakeholders, what will be the opinion of stakeholders, the religious leaders or common people, and in terms of that, how a consensus can be built in a country as diverse as we are. Now, we understand that, there are constitutional provisions in Article 44, that is directive principles. But in the beginning, when the drafting committee sat and, defined what we call as basic fundamental rights, the UCC was never made a fundamental right in anybody, taking into consideration the diverse beliefs, the customary practices, the tribal practices, the various practices, amongst the majority community in its India, from state to state, part to part, from MP to Chhattisgarh, going on to Bihar, the practices in Haryana and especially in Rajasthan. For example, a child marriage, still under Hindu law, is a valid marriage, but at the same time is also a criminal offense. So the element of uniformity can only start with a debate and a meaningful debate, not as, only on count of a political motive, in view of ensuing elections in some states or at the central level. So there has to be, according to me, a deepened, interest in this subject, whereas for gender equality and all other parameters, the Uniform Civil Code is welcome. But what is the starting point? What is the discussion point?
Yes.
So let that be placed on the table.
Okay. I'm for the purposes of a discussion over here only limiting and restricting myself to the point which is supposedly being made by the Parliament panel chief, Mr. Sushil Modi, Deshat Nigam. I believe right here on our program a few days ago on the big fight, to be precise, you had suggested the same. You said that it is a peculiar situation and tribals must be kept out of the ambit. And at that very moment, many experts who were in that discussion with you said, then how do you use the word uniform when you yourself in the same breath are talking about exclusions even before a draft is ready? Now Mr. Sushil Modi is saying the same.
Well, Sanket, that day, since there were too many people on the debate, I could not give you the concept and the context in which I had said. Now, Mr. Mir also follows a particular ideology. He talks about the timing. And if you have a problem with timing, openly say that as and when your ideology comes to power, you will implement Uniform Civil Code immediately. But you're not saying so. In principle, you agree, but you have certain doubts about the process being about the timing and being brought in by BJP.
The point on tribal, sir.
Yes, I'm coming to that. Yeah. Now, let us compare the Uttarakhand's bill. Now, Uttarakhand is, tribals are not matrilineal or matriarchal society. They have certain similar problems with the rest of the country. If you compare with the Northeast, it's a matrilineal, matriarchal society where women have got more rights than men, and men are quite happy with it. And therefore, the sense of exploitation that you have in terms of gender discrimination, unequal rights, does not exist there. Even if there are unequal rights to the men, they're quite happy with it. They want to live with their mother-in-laws after marriage. Good enough. They want that kind of a system. No exploitation. Women have more right. Now, the focus of the Uniform Civil Code is to remove gender discrimination, women discrimination especially, and to give them equal rights. And the demand is coming from those particular communities. The demand in the Northeast is not coming from those communities. It's a harmonious society based on certain parameters, the customary rights, cultural rights that they have, and they're living in harmony. And they don't feel discrimination because men say we are not being discriminated out there. So that distinction you have to bear in mind.
But Mr. Nigam, by that logic, there are many progressive practices in the religion, in various religions. But you do talk about, you see, the point over here is the definition of the word uniform. If something has to be uniform, it has to be equally applicable to all. The moment you start making distinctions, you are attacking the very first word of the Uniform Civil Code.
Let me answer that. I said the focus word here is not uniform, but removal of gender discrimination and exploitation. Focus on those. Call it by any other name. You have got to remove those discriminations. I think it's a misnomer. You can call it by any name. If the gender discrimination in any community, whether Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Parsis, has to be removed, then you give it any name. That discrimination and inequality has to be removed.
Okay.
Unnecessarily, let us not focus on the word uniform, as I have given the distinction between the Northeast and the rest of the country. And there the people are very happy.
Mr. Nigam, isn't that the main highlight of
No,
every election manifesto of the Bharatiya Janata Party? Uniform civil code, because civil codes exist.
They have given a name. No, they have given a name.
It's the uniformity which is new.
No. Uniformity, if it leads to exploitation of women, as it may happen in the Northeast, then you can't give the word name uniformity. It is about gender discrimination.
As Mr. Mir also said, a much larger debate is required on this. But thank you very much for your response on this.